What's going on, y'all? My name is Brian Waldron, CEO of Event Space Elites. Wanted to bring you this video real quick just to show you and demonstrate the differences between Event Space and Airbnb. Reason why I wanted to put out this video is because I understand a lot of people, they're trying to get some of that financial freedom, increase their income, and typically these are the top two things that they compare. Should I get into Event Space or should I get into Airbnb? Obviously, I've been Event Spacer for 5 years, so I'm kind of biased, but I did want to show you guys the pros and cons of each and bring sweet data to you, just straight numbers to show you so you can make your own decision. Also got my trusty iPhone calculator right here in case I mess up on any of the numbers, whatever the case may be. In case you are new to the channel, you don't know who I am, my name is Brian Waldron. By the age of 26, I did $3.5 million in my event space business. Now we have a company called Event Space Elites where we help you basically find, fund, and fill your first venue. We also have Scale Your Venue where we help, like I said, scale your venue. If you have an existing event space, we'll turn it up for you. So, yeah, I know I don't like to waste time. I like to get straight into the video. Event spaces versus Airbnb. Now, I figured I'd choose one specific city. I don't want you to think that this won't work on other cities or anything like that. The only reason I chose a city is so we can use comparable numbers so it can make actual sense, right? So I chose New York. I'm choosing, and I'll probably get a little bit more specific. I'll probably just choose Brooklyn, New York, just because I know that off the top of my head. But also, again, I just want to be very, very specific. You can make this comparison in Charlotte, North Carolina. You can make this comparison in Sacramento, California. All I'm doing is I'm choosing one specific city so that the revenue for Airbnb and event spaces are comparable. It's not like I'm comparing numbers from San Jose, California and New York, or Wichita, Arkansas and Milwaukee, whatever the case may be. I want the numbers to be comparable so it makes sense, right? Let's get into it. So, event spaces versus Airbnb. Unit price, so you're gonna notice down here on the left and down here on the right, we have revenue, expenses, and capital costs and cash flow. Revenue, we have unit price and units sold. So basically how many of the thing you're selling times how much it costs. Expenses, I have rent, utilities, cleaning, and insurance. Obviously there are other expenses that go into it, but those are the four biggest ones that we'll just use for example purposes. Capital costs, AKA the money that you need to get the business started up. I have furniture and security deposit, as well as build out, almost forgot that. Can't forget that, I wrote it on Airbnb. Build out, and then we have monthly cash flow, year-to-date profit, and 5-year profit. And the reason I wanted to include those three things specifically is simply because a lot of times the capital costs, you can't factor that into a monthly cash flow, or unless you're breaking it down month by month. So you wanna look at it as a year-to-date profit or like a 1-year profit, right? Let's get into it, right? Let's start with good old event space. Unit price on average, we're seeing, I would say about, with a good package, about $2,500 a night, right? So we're gonna say unit price, $2,500 on average. The event spaces, at least the ones that we operate and we know how to run and that we teach all our clients in Event Space Elites, on average you'll get booked, let's say 8 to 12 times a month. So let's just say 10, a nice median 10, right? Which brings our total revenue, 2,500 times 10, 25,000, okay? If you're standing all the way back there, you probably can't see the numbers, but 25,000, right? Coming down to expenses. For a space that can easily charge $2,500 a night, you're probably looking at about 2,000 square feet. And let's say on average, 2,000 square feet in New York, in Brooklyn, you can probably get for about $25 a square foot. So let's calculate that monthly rent real quick. 2,000 times 25 divided by 12. Your rent is gonna be about 4,200, 4,166 a month. All right, so let's just bump that up to $4,200. Utilities, electric, gas, water, probably be about another $400-500 a month. Let's just say $450. Cleaning, you can probably get for about $100 if you really negotiate it well. So cleaning times units sold 10, so that would be about $1,000 a month. Insurance, if you break it up into monthly payments, you can get insurance for probably $400 or $500 a month. Let's just say $450. All right, capital costs. So furniture to get a Let's just write it over here, 2,000 square foot spot. Furniture to get things going, probably gonna cost you, if you go on the lower, cheaper end, probably like 7,500 with tables and chairs. Security deposit, if you do 1 month rent, 1 month security, let's say they even ask for 2 months security. 1 month of security is equal to 1 month of rent, so rent was 4,200, so that's times 2, that's 8,400. Build out. Let's say you do a nice minimum viable product, you spend probably about $15,000 in build out. That's 15 grand. Let's calculate those capital costs. So we have 7,500 plus 8,400 plus 15,000. That's 30,900. Let's just say 31,000. For expenses, monthly expenses, let's total that up. So we have 4,200 plus 450 plus 1,000 plus 450. That's about 6,100. Okay. And then revenue, we had 25K. All right. So let's calculate this down. Monthly cash flow, year-to-date profit, 5-year profit. I'm actually going to change year-to-date profit. And I'm just gonna say 1 year profit, just to make it more accurate. So for our monthly cash flow, that's simple. That's revenue minus expenses. So we have $25,000 in revenue minus 6,100. So in our little scenario, we'll be netting about 18,900 a month, which is actually very, very realistic. This is something more along the lines of what we were doing in BK Event Spaces. For 1 year profit, okay, cool. So this is where things get a little bit more fun. So now we have to include our capital costs. So revenue 25,000, that's per month. So we're gonna do 25,000 times 12. So our revenue for the year in this example would be about 300,000. So let's do over here 300 minus our expenses for the year would be 6,100 times 12, which would be 73,200. I'll just put 73.2. And then capital cost was about another 31,000. All right, so let's do that. 300,000 minus 73,200 minus 31,000. So for the year, you would be netting about 195,800. Now let's do 5 year. Actually, you know what? Let's just leave it at the 1 year. 5 years, just be multiplying by 5, whatever the case may be. So I'm not even gonna waste your time with that one. In 1 year, actually, you know what? I do wanna include 5 year because typically you might have a 5 year lease. So let's do it like this, okay? So now what we have, okay, there's 72 months in 5 years. So let's do 25,000 times 72, which would be 1.8 million. 1.8 million minus 6,100 times 72, which would be 439,200. And then capital cost, that's a one-time investment. That's 31,000. Let's add that up. So 1.8 million minus 439,200 minus 31,000. Your 5 year profit would be 1,329,800. Let me clean that up. Cool. So those are our event space numbers. Let's go over to our Airbnb numbers now. An average Airbnb in Brooklyn, New York, right? Let's take a 2-bedroom, 2-bath, right? Feed a family of 4, sleep a family of 4, or maybe even 6, right? That Airbnb would probably be able to get maybe 400 a night. If you don't believe me, go on Airbnb, comp it out, whatever the case may be. Let's just say about 400 a night. But Airbnbs on average, probably on average have about a 66% occupancy rate, which is maybe about 18 nights a month. So we'll say the units sold, 18. So that's 400 times 18, that's 7,200. Very, very comparable. And again, I know this, I have Airbnbs. I see the numbers, I've done the research, I see what they entail. Obviously there's people who do Airbnbs on big luxury mansions, people who do Airbnbs in small houses, people who do Airbnbs in condominiums. Again, for the purpose of this example, and obviously there are people who have event spaces that seat and hold 1,000 people. But for this specific example, we're taking a standard New York, Brooklyn Airbnb and a standard New York, Brooklyn event space, compare it one by one by one. If we did it for another city, it'd be the same thing, just maybe different values, different levels of elevation, whatever the case may be, right? Cool. So, expenses, rent. For a 2-bedroom, 2-bath in New York, you'll probably be paying about $4,000. Yeah, I know. That's why I got up out of there. About $4,000 in rent per month. Utilities, your utilities probably wouldn't be too crazy. Your electric bill is probably gonna be like maybe $250. Water bill probably, I mean, your water bill should probably be included in your rent. So let's just round it out to about 300 utilities per month. Cleaning for a 2-bedroom, 2-bath is gonna be comparable to a regular event space, so about maybe 120 a month. Again, I have Airbnbs and we have 1-bedrooms and that's what we're paying. So for a 2-bedroom, 2-bath, I could definitely say about 150 per clean. And then insurance for apartments is super cheap. You'll probably get like a lemonade plan for like $10 a month, right? So cleaning is per clean. So let's actually say, so 150. So out of those units sold, so for cleaning, let's do it like this. Out of those units sold, we have about 18 nights. Let's say each person stays for about 4 days. So that's about 4 cleanings. So we have 150 times 4. That's about 600. And then for insurance, like I said, that's only probably gonna be about 10 bucks. Capital costs. So to furnish a 2-bedroom, 2-bath in Brooklyn, you're probably gonna be spending around maybe, if you want it standard, like minimalistic, you could probably be spending maybe around 6 to 8K. If you want it to look actually decent and actually stand out in the Airbnb market, you'd probably be spending close to 10K. So let's just say 10K. Actually, you know what? I'll give it 9K. I will give it 9K, okay? Security deposit is usually way cheaper for apartments. It's usually a couple $100. Let's just say 400, right? Build out, non-existent. You don't have to build out an apartment, it's already ready to go. Let's get into it. Monthly cash flow. So, expenses, let's calculate 4,000 plus 300 plus 600 plus 10, 4910. Revenue we've already calculated. Capital costs 9,400. Okay, monthly cash flow. So revenue minus expenses 7,200 minus 4910, 2290. So monthly cash flow about 2290. That's actually really reasonable. That's actually pretty decent. I know people who make way less. I know people who make more, but for on average, 2-bedroom, 2-bath in New York, I can see that, making about 2,300 a month, absolutely. 1 year profit, okay, cool. So revenue, 7,200 times 12 would be 86,400. Expenses, 4,910 times 12, that's 58,920 minus capital costs, which is about 9,400. Let's see what that brings us to. 86,400 minus 58,920 minus 9,400 is about 18,080 for the year. Okay, not bad for the year. 5-year profit. Let's look at a 5-year lease. And if I'm being very, very honest, you can't even get an apartment for a 5-year lease. Most landlords will only rent it out to you for 1 year, maybe 2 years max. Let's just be honest, right? 5 years, 5 years, 5 years. So let's take 7,200 times 72, which is 518, 400 minus 4910 times 72. So apparently my memory card became full. So just want to bring it back, do a quick recap, and we're going to close out this thing. So event space versus Airbnb, right? And again, I want to preface all this by saying I have both event spaces and Airbnbs. I'm not new to this. I know a little bit about what I'm talking about. So revenue, event space. And again, we chose Brooklyn, New York because we wanted to keep the real estate the same. We didn't want to compare like Wichita, Arkansas to like Minneapolis, Minnesota or something like that. We wanted to keep the geography the same. So we just went with Brooklyn, New York. Event space versus Airbnb. Revenue on the event space side, 25K. Airbnb side, 7,200. Expenses, we got about 6,100 for a 2,000 square foot, which is pretty standard. Event space, 2-bedroom, 2-bath. We got 4,910 for Airbnb. Capital costs, we got about 31,000 for our capital costs. Capital costs, we got about 9,400. Monthly cash flow. So I think this is around the time where the video kind of got cut off. Monthly cash flow. So we did monthly revenue, which is 25K, minus monthly expenses, which is 6,100, to get monthly cash flow for an event space, 18,900. Monthly cash flow for an Airbnb. We have monthly revenue of 7,200 minus monthly expenses of 4,910 to leave monthly cash flow at 2,290. And honestly, these numbers are very, very realistic. I've seen these numbers myself. I've seen them in other people. You could do comp analyses, all those different things. 1 year profit. So for event space, multiply 25,000 times 12, expenses times 12, minus capital costs. We have a 1 year profit of a whopping 195,800. Very realistic. For our Airbnb, revenue times 12, expenses times 12, minus capital costs. We have a 1 year profit of 18,080. 5-year profit for a standard 5-year lease. And again, I don't know if I mentioned this in the other clip of the video, but you really can't get a 5-year lease for an apartment. Most of them will give you a 1 year or 2 year lease and you're just gonna have to keep on renewing and renewing. 5-year profit, again, times 72 months, we have a 5-year profit of 1.3 million for our event space. 5-year profit, we have 155, 480. And of course, as Airbnbs get more and more saturated, that's just gonna dwindle and get smaller and smaller. The great thing that I love about event spaces is that because the barrier to entry is so high, it makes it harder for a lot of people to get into this business, and actually 40% of venues actually do go out of business within their first year, which is why we recommend this is not a business to play with, okay? This is not a business that you wanna get in and just try to wing it, try to figure this out. Again, I mentioned in my last video, I've seen people become thousands of dollars in debt. I've seen people lose their homes, lose their businesses, break up families. It's really not a game that you really want to play around with. So again, if you are looking to get into event spaces, please, please, please get the education, educate yourself. I know these videos help a lot of people, but these are just to inform you about what you're getting into. This isn't really a step-by-step roadmap. If you are looking for a step-by-step roadmap, highly encourage you, apply to work with us for event space elites. And the reason I say apply is because unfortunately we cannot work with everybody. We have pretty strict requirements. So I'm gonna drop the link below at the bottom of this video in the description to apply for event space elites. If you have an existing event space and you're looking to scale it, you can apply for a higher tier program called Scale Your Venue. Hope this video was helpful. I'll talk to you all soon.